G'day folks, Luke here from Fish That Snag. Thank you so much for watching. I got a message through YouTube the other day from a young fella down in Victoria with a really good question. He went into his local tackle store the other day to buy some fishing lures, and when he got to the counter to buy them, the guy, as he was taking his money and everything, basically said to him, just make sure you upgrade the trebles before you throw those lures. Now the young fella didn't think much of it, went out, went fishing, and one of the first things that happened after a good fish struck the lure was he noticed the rear treble on his lure, one of the hooks straightened. So then he remembered back to this guy at the tackle store saying, make sure you upgrade your trebles, and hence his question. He wants to know what's the go with upgrading the trebles on your lures, what's the difference between trebles and singles, and all that sort of stuff. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Let's get into the workshop and have a bit of a chat. Better. Okay folks, let's talk hooks, specifically hooks on lures. Let's talk trebles versus singles. So probably the first thing to remember is that most people generally change the hooks on their lures due to quality first and foremost. And quality is directly related to price point. Now what do I mean by price point? Fishing lure manufacturers are operating in an incredibly competitive market. They're all vying for your attention when you walk into a tackle store by producing a product which says, buy me, buy me. So some lure manufacturers will sacrifice component quality on their lures for a better looking lure or something that has something flash on it or looks a little bit different that is going to get your interest. Whereas some other lure companies will just not compromise on quality at all, and they'll have a terrific looking lure, great componentry, the packaging will be really top notch, but you will pay for the difference. So other reasons that people will change the hooks on their lures are to do with catch and release fishing. Some people believe that treble hooks create and cause a lot more damage to a fish's mouth and jaw than what single hooks will. Other people believe that single hooks versus treble hooks, hookup rates, there's an argument for either side. Some people believe that treble hooks give you a far better hookup rate than single hooks. Others argue the other way. And the type of fish that you're targeting as well. If you're going offshore targeting big fish that fight really hard for extended periods of time, some people will swear by using single hooks in that situation, versus if you're in a very pressured waterway where the bite is very hard to entice, trebles will have a higher hookup rate. At least that's what some people say. Now in a previous video I've gone over how you can change the hooks on your lures and things, and I'll put the link for that down in the description below. So a word of caution to start with, changing the hooks on your lure will change a couple of things. It can affect the sink rate of the lure. It can affect the lure action. So you really need to think about and do your homework first before you just start going and switching hooks left, right and center on your lures. So let's talk trebles first. Okay, these are probably the most common hooks that you'll find on fishing lures when you walk into a tackle store. So the trebles have a number of pros in their favor. A lot of people claim that trebles will have a much higher hookup rate due to the hook exposure on the lure. So when you look at that, there's hooks all over it, and no matter what side, apart from on the top, no matter what side you come at that lure, there's a fairly good chance that a fish is going to get hooked up on it. As a result of that good hookup rate, a lot of people, and I as well, believe that trebles are really good in highly pressured waterways where there's a lot of fishing going on and a lot of boat traffic, and where fish are probably not as aggressive or going to hit the lure as hard as often. A lot of the time you might be lucky enough that the fish might just come up inquisitive to have a look at the lure, and it might sort of turn and you might just jag it on the side of the face or something. Or they're a little bit tentative, like they'll come up and they'll sort of nose it, they'll sort of tap on the lure but not quite commit to a big bite. and that's where all those hooks hanging around are really handy to sort of just jag into the fish. So for those people fishing in those type of environments, and you want to be sure that you're actually going to get the fish and have the highest chance to do that, then trebles are probably the way you want to go. Now, there's a couple of bad sides to trebles, and a lot of catch and release fishermen will testify to these. Without a doubt, all this lure bling hanging around, all these trebles and hooks and things, does cause more damage to the fish's mouth and jaw. Now, if you're catching the fish for a feed, that's probably not a big deal. If you're a catch and release fisherman and you only want to take one home and release the rest, then you want to release the fish in the best condition possible, and that's why a lot of guys will go away from trebles to run singles, so it causes less damage to the fish's mouth and jaw. Some of the other things that people notice with trebles, some of the bad things, are that they tend to foul up quite a lot, whether they hook onto each other, hook onto other things, get snagged a lot easier and things like that. They do tend to pick up pretty much anything that comes past them when they're moving through the water. And one of the things I've noticed, especially with trebles, is I think they can be used against you by the fish. Not deliberately, but once one of those hooks is set in the mouth, it leaves two good leverage points, which if they're inside the fish's mouth as well, and you've got an angler that's pulling really hard on the line, trying to get the fish in, and the fish is fighting really hard and it's got a good amount of weight, sometimes they can leverage off those two other hooks to pop one of those trebles out. And sometimes I see it where it literally pops out, or it'll straighten one and get away, especially in an extended fight situation. So, you know, if you're pretty close to a snag and you get that fish out really quick and into the boat, it's probably not going to happen that much. But if you get a big tuna or something, a big GT or something, and you're fighting for an extended period of time, the more time these trebles are in that fish's mouth, the more time it's got to sort of work out the angle to get it out, because all it's trying to do is just get this painful thing out of its mouth, and you know, they can leverage against each other and pop them out or straighten them. So next up we have singles. Singles also have pros and cons. The good thing about singles, when they do hook up, you get a very clean, solid penetration of the fish's mouth and jaw. And I think that's one of the reasons why you'll find on a lot of the high-end lures that you find in tackle stores. So think the Nomad range of fishing lures and things, the Shimano range. When you go in and you have a look at those, you'll notice that a lot of them are running only singles on their lures. And I think that's to do with the type of fishing that those lures are applied in. They're mostly fishing on big reefs after big fish that fight really, really hard. And they want a nice, clean, solid hookup where they know the fish isn't going to throw that lure. The other thing is less damage to the fish's mouth and jaw. Okay, it's just one penetration point, a lot less damage. And again, going back to that catch and release point, that's why a lot of catch and release fishermen will change to singles. They're less likely to straighten, which is again playing on that negative of trebles, where there's no real leverage point for the fish to use apart from the lure itself, so it's very hard for the fish to get that extra leverage to try and straighten them. Next time you're out on the water and you decide to change from trebles and singles, just have a look at the difference in the lure action when you change the hooks. It's one thing I've definitely noticed, and I think a lot of other people, especially game fishermen and offshore fishermen, have noticed that singles improve the action of the lure. And I think that's a lot to do with water resistance and the weight of trebles versus singles. The inline singles just seem to be, inline. They seem to be a bit more streamlined with the lure and allow that lure its full action in the water, improving the action. Probably the biggest negative that I hear, the most common one, is all to do with hookup rate. A lot of people just firmly believe that singles have less hookup rate, and I mean, when you look at lure coverage around the lure compared to a lure with trebles, you can see that there's probably less chance that a shy fish or a fish that's, you know, curious and only going to bump the lure or something like that, that's not committed to the bite, probably has less chance of getting hooked up, just purely based on that hook exposure. But a fish, you know, I haven't noticed a huge difference, okay, myself. I think if a fish wants it and it's going to hit it hard, you've got just as much chance with a single as you do with a treble. One tip I do have for you though, regardless of either way you go, is pay attention to the split rings on your lures. The split rings are the bit that goes between the lure. There's the light. The light's terrible at the moment. Between the lure and the hook, okay, and they are just as important as the quality of hooks that you put on your lures. Okay folks, I'm all done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of this video, and if not, even at the very least, if it's generated a little bit of discussion amongst your mates when you go fishing next, then job done. Remember to hit the subscribe button. Every subscriber makes a huge difference to what I'm trying to do. And if you've got a question that you want answered, then just put it into the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer it for you.